Okay. In the rush. I always love this part where I see some familiar names.
Well, James is obviously with us.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi, James.
How are you, Phil?
Yeah, I'm great. Great, thank
See you on the
you.
screen.
It's
Did you say?
very sunny here where we are. I'm in South Wales today. Really sunny, so it's lovely. Where are you, Phil?
I'm in Hampshire, just near a place called Petersfield, which is about 15, 20 miles away from Portsmouth.
Wow, of course. I remember at the last show you were driving back. That was a
Yeah, yeah. Well, there are worse places. The A3 is, like any motorway. But no, generally it's great because you're driving into, a horizon of sea, which is nice.
nice. So you're reaching for that horizon.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Oh no, it's fantastic to see so many people. And I know that there will be lots of people that will be watching this at a more convenient time. So thank you so much for joining us, Phil. For those that are unaware of Phil, Phil is from Working Feedback. I personally have worked with you guys for quite a few years now.
Yeah, you have. Yeah.
We've had some amazing conversations on a topic which actually does really affect us all in lots of different ways, either in a good way or not in a good way for the not so positive reviews. So it was really good for you to agree to come and talk to us because I know you've got years of experience and insight into this topic.
Well,
Do you
that's
just
the
want
thing,
to?
Lisa, as well, because you've seen it evolve so much. As you say,
Yes.
you've been with us for a number of years now, but you've seen it go from, what was initially Google reviews and just how it's just, exploded in terms of how important feedback and reviews are.
Hugely. So, my sort of nearly 30 years in practice management has gone from, us having to do, well, not having to do patient feedback, but hopefully those that were pretty on the ball did it anyway. But
Yeah.
most people in the early days used to think, oh, it's just an exercise where we're not going to really listen to it. We're not really going to use it. We're certainly probably not using it for marketing, let alone for a particularly improvement. It's just going to give patients an excuse to moan. um,
Yeah, well, we say all the time, it's one of the things that it's almost like a strap line is that, feedback used to be a luxury. It was considered a luxury, but now it's essential. You just can't do without it. That's how much it's changed.
yeah, and obviously from a regulatory point of view now, it's mandatory. But also for those practice managers who want to help their practice grow, it is an essential part of our role to manage now.
Mm.
I know sort of my journey was very much getting internal feedback, then getting external feedback. And then to the point of actually we need more now, and then came the different platforms of Google in the early days, kind of Trustpilot, some of the early runners. But now it is intrinsic in the way that many of us practice managers run our practices, as well as the regulatory. So definitely seen a massive, massive change over the last few years. And it, like many things, like compliance, it's become something that has to be managed well. For me, I'm a big believer in automation. If we have a system we can get automated and it
Yeah.
works well and doesn't reduce customer service and patient-centric care, then we should do it because otherwise we'd go a bit insane trying to spin all these plates all the time. So tell us about working feedback and ultimately what that is.
Yeah, of course. Well, thanks for having me today, and it's really good to be amongst the Adam community. Well, as Lisa said, I'm Philip Molden. I'm a co-founder and director of Working Feedback, and we've been doing this for almost 20 years now, helping dental practices turn patient feedback and reviews into one of their most powerful business tools. I think everybody listening today, when we talk about feedback, most people immediately think of Google or worse, patient complaints. But the truth is, feedback is much bigger than that. You know, it's a digital world now, and it builds your reputation, it attracts new patients, and gives your team the confidence to improve, as well as Lisa mentioned earlier, the compliance side of things. Really important that all of this gels together. And we've seen that, you know, the practices that thrive are the ones who take a proactive approach to this. And as you said, Lisa, automation is key to this. And if you're just waiting for feedback to land on them, it doesn't work in the same way. You don't get any benefits from it. You are always reacting. So those that have smart systems can gather it, share it, and act on it. So I wanted to just give a bit of an outline as to today. Hopefully, I'll be able to give you some practical ways. Boosting your online reputation so you stand out from competitors. Handling complaints with confidence instead of fear. And so that you can gather reviews that genuinely work without putting pressure on your patients or your team. So it's a toolkit, you know, in terms of this session, simple strategies that hopefully you can go back to your practice and use straight away.
Oh, you're on mute, Lisa.
Sorry about that. I'm on a practice visit today. I should point this out. I'm on a practice in South Wales, and the office is really small, so I've actually hijacked one of the surgeries, and outside the door's decon, so there was a bit of clattering then. So I've muted myself. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, you mentioned complaints before. Now, many of us in this webinar, I don't think anyone's immune from receiving complaints. So that for me is one of the most important reasons. The marketing side is obviously a bonus, but the complaint management side for me is gold, to have something that's helping us to have that feedback brought to us in a way that's not sometimes, you know, straight onto a Google review, that kind of thing, where we get no chance to, one, see if it's actually genuine, see if it's fair,
Yeah.
and actually see, you know, use it constructively. So having patients being able to complain, one of the biggest cruxes with me when I go and do practice inspections or go and do improvement plans is looking at practices. And one of the first things I will always say, because I am obsessed with complaint management, is where's your complaint policy? And it's like, it's on the back of the door, and the door's always closed because we don't want people to see it because it might encourage them to complain. And I'm like, I've never understood that. It's like, no, let's give them the route to complain to us, because if they don't have that route, what happens is they'll get on that phone, they'll go onto the laptop, how to complain about a dentist, GDC, dental law, wham. So it's about signposting them. Yes, we don't want them, we don't like them, we hate them. Yes, we take them personally sometimes and it upsets us. But if we are much better at dealing with that locally than if they go global and online and things like that. And it's the same now with feedback. Let them have the route to give us feedback so that they actually, one, tell us what we might not be doing right, or what we could improve on, or actually to prevent a full-blown complaint, which, as we all know, can take blinking hours and stress off our day. So yeah, the complaints, what's your views on the management of complaints and working feedback?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, if there's any takeaway from today, it is about being proactive in terms of the feedback element, because as you said, Lisa, what often tends to happen is that if somebody, I mean, interestingly, from some of the research that we've got a white paper out, we found that particularly with Google reviews, it's either they'll leave a 1-star review or they'll leave a 5-star review. And that seems to be the majority of the pattern for Google reviews. So that's something to understand if you're always asking for Google reviews. So try not to just ask for Google reviews. But the important thing is being proactive. And complaints aren't fun, but one of the best things about the complaint side of things is that if you do receive them, it's have a clear head. Stay calm, listen, because often if there's a complaint, it's often tied into some other comment as well. So it's really useful to try and understand the whole picture rather than just somebody having a complaint about a certain thing. Because ultimately patients want to feel heard, and regardless of what your opinions are at the time, it's important that you address it professionally. I think the other thing as well, which is one of the biggest issues, certainly with complaints, is we all like to go into our little dark corner. Something like this happens and we think, well, actually, no, it's going to go away, or potentially it'll calm down. The thing is, I think acknowledge, it's really important, even if you disagree. You've got to acknowledge their experience, and you're not agreeing with it. You're just simply saying, I can see why you'd feel that way. You can go to explaining it a little bit further, but it doesn't say that you disagree with it totally. So acknowledge it. And it's one of those things. I think, there's a simple framework that I like to suggest in terms of this is listen, it's empathize, it's clarify exactly what the issue is where you can. And then obviously the last step is offering a resolution or a next step towards this. Now, the other important part in doing this is that what we don't want, I think everybody remembers this scenario with, I think it used to be with TripAdvisor, where somebody would leave a negative review, and all of a sudden the owner of a hotel or a bed and breakfast would be straight on there responding literally with their initial things. So don't take it online. It's important that you don't, that you just do not react and have this long conversation on there. So where possible and where it's relevant, it's not always relevant to take it offline, but if you can, just say, look, would love to deal with you, because the important thing is you're acknowledging it. And even if you don't necessarily know who that patient is at the time, it's important that you acknowledge that you're going to deal with it and doing that. And back to your point earlier, Lisa, about the fact of, a complaints procedure policy, document it and share it internally, because, complaints can often reveal patterns, and it's not always a staff issue. Sometimes it can be something to do with the system, so the more that you can document this and share it, the more it becomes part of teamwork, and everybody understands what you're trying to achieve, potentially things that may not be as smooth or as solution driven, process driven as they could be. And I think the important thing as well is if you handle and follow some of these steps, and it does differ obviously, but if you do handle some of these, you can turn what is sometimes an unhappy patient into a very, very loyal advocate.
Yeah. No, thanks, Phil. So yeah, you're completely right. My view on complaint management is use it, but if it's feedback, don't just have it, well, it's just feedback, like we sometimes do with, well, it's guidance, we don't have to do anything about it. Actually use it. A patient raising a concern, and if we have a patient at the desk, quite often, what we'll have is, I don't want to make a complaint, but I do, as you said, want to be heard. I had one this week, patient, in my opinion, the patient was completely wrong. She'd got completely the wrong end of the stick. She hadn't really listened to what the clinician had told her. Completely different story to reality. But I empathized. I understand. I'm so sad that you didn't have a positive experience. We gratefully receive your feedback and learn from it. I don't like it when we sound like, really just generic platitudes. My view when we respond to these people is be genuine, be human. Don't do I know if I've complained to a company, a big company, corporate company, and in the past, so we get a response that says, "Dear Mrs. Bainham, thank you for complaint. Here at blah blah blah, we take complaints very seriously. Use every oh right, you don't care. You're just sending me your."
It's an automated response. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
rubbish.
Yeah,
So actually, don't be afraid to be very human and normal. One of my first things when I get any sort of complaint or not so good feedback would be, I am so sad to hear this. I genuinely am. I'm bloody annoyed sometimes as well. But to the patient, I am really sad to hear this, because I am, for whatever reason. we genuinely set out to make sure all patients get a good experience. And
Of course,
if
yeah.
it hasn't happened,
Yeah.
we are so sorry. It's not an admission, it's not an agreement. You're actually showing, you know, and you really made a good point before. I loved that. I loved how you said that. You know, I always call it the 3 R's: reflection, reassurance, resolution. You know, reflection. Okay, so I just wanted to pick up on this. You've told me that you're not happy about this. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? And then, because instantly you've got that connection where they're listening, and they're so much less likely to escalate things.
Yeah.
And then the resolution is, well, it's really important to us that we find an agreeable solution to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a little look into it, and I'm going to come back to you by Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I think if we're handling those sort of complaint straight feedback in that way, it's very easy to do it.
It is. Yeah. I mean, the understanding, because I think the thing to also understand about, certainly with complaints, and let's also call it, you know, constructive and negative feedback, because some of this can be gold dust. You know, some of this feedback that you would get, that if you are proactive, you're genuinely saying, you're not asking patients to say how wonderful you are. You're saying, what could we do to improve our level of service to you? And that is one of the most powerful phrases you'll ever use, because your patient understands that not only are you a professional practice, but also you want to do things right. You know, you want to get better. You don't want to say, we don't want to rest on our laurels of how wonderful we are, because the thing with dental practices, there are so many constituent parts. The feedbacks that we receive about some of the content, you know, it ranges from nightmare car parking all the way through to the weather, through to not communicating enough about later. You know, there's so many elements to it, and that's not even touched the clinical yet. So it's really important that there's that ability for your patients to be able to leave and to be asked for that. But also, what I will say, Lisa, and you may well be coming on this, but is also replying to it, because when it is constructive, what we don't want to see, and what we've become kind of a bit whitewashed with, is a wall of 5-star reviews. You know, everything is perfect, and it's not. It can't be, because, as I say, you know, whether you're a dental practice or whether you deliver parcels, there are things that go wrong occasionally. It's how you deal with it and how you respond to it when it does go wrong, or it could be improved, that makes all the difference. Because particularly when we're talking about, you know, feedback and reviews and reputation, your reputation, if you're promoting your feedback as we do through working feedback on your website and various other platforms, onto Google, etc., is that you've got to think about whether it's existing patients or potentially new patients. They're looking at your reviews and they can see lots of reviews, and of course, you know, the benefit is that the vast majority are going to be positive, but we expect and we want to see something. It's a bit like Amazon reviews. You know, we'll look at them. Oh, I can see that somebody made a comment there, but oh, okay, I can see what they've done. You know, they responded to it. And it's made you more human, because it means that, yeah, we get things wrong, but it's what we do as a result. And that gives your practice much more of a personality than a wall of 5-star reviews. And the other thing as well, I will say, with replies, certainly for complaints and side of things, when you are responding and you're doing it online, try and use keywords as well, you know, in relation to a particular treatment. So it will stand out in terms of making sure that you're dealing with a specific thing rather than a general dentistry side of things.
No, that's really good advice. So
Yeah.
thank you. I've noticed there's been a pretty big increase in patients making threats to leave a bad review. And I think this kind of sometimes comes back to making sure that we're signposting how they can complain. It does feel, I don't know how anyone else feels, and by the way, please feel free. We've got the chat box at the side if anyone wants to ask a question, or feel free to, you know, just unmute and ask us the question, interrupt us, it's fine if you've got anything specific you want to ask or add. But patients, something happening, whether it's the practice's fault or the patient's just an absolute nightmare, if they don't get what they want, then I'm going to go online and do you a bad review. Now, I've got one of my rules as a practice manager is I don't deal with terrorists. Terrorists are not patients. They shouldn't be patients. And if you make threats, the relationship is pretty much over. And I've had a lot of practices come to me recently where this patient, if I don't give this patient what I want, they are going to do a bad review. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this has come through. It's indicative of particularly Google reviews because, Google reviews are open to anybody, whether they're a patient or not. I know we're obviously talking about patients, but no, absolutely very similar to yourself in terms of that, Lisa, is that it's important that, and as I was saying earlier, when it comes to reviews and when somebody is leaving that, is that you have a voice as well. And that's why it's best not to sweep it under the carpet thinking, no, it's going to go away. It'll get lost by the rest of the reviews that come in, because Google has changed the way that it does reviews as well. So it's no longer, as they come in, they push the other ones down. It's done in a very, very different way where it becomes much more logical in terms of picking out keywords for particular treatments and things. And that's what will be the most relevant. But back to your point about that is that, no, it's important that you respond, and if it is on, if they do happen to do that, whether you're talking them face to face, is that again, it's that empathy. It's exactly, how can we resolve this without potentially resorting to this? But is there a solution? Is there a fix that we can do in terms of this? And if that's not satisfactory, they may well go down and leave their online review. But when it does, if it does come in, it's important, as I say, acknowledge it, because I get a lot of feedback from some of our practices, and particularly practice managers, saying, well, I've got this bad Google review. I don't even know who the patient is. They won't share it. What shall I do? And the advice 100% is always respond to it, acknowledge the comment that's been left. And if it is a case of you don't know who the patient is, or you don't particularly recognize that situation, which is often the case, is that call that out. I'm sorry, but we don't recognize this particular comment in terms of this. Would love to talk to you directly. So it's dealing with it and it's acting upon it. So I think it's a case of, it's going to vary in some situations, but it's important that you don't suddenly feel threatened by it. It's important that you have a voice as well.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Something else that seems to crop up, and it sort of does concern me a little bit sometimes, is when we are responding to these complaints, and we are going to get onto the positive bits of it all in a moment, aren't we?
Yeah.
The more positive bits.
Yeah, there's lots.
The bits that help us grow, not just help us, manage the complaints. So when a patient complains, and you're quite right, because if a patient has mentioned anything about themselves or any specific data, it doesn't necessarily mean that we can go on and add to that. We have to be very careful GDPR wise.
Yeah.
I helped with a case a few years ago where a patient had done a bad review. It was a Facebook review, I think it was. And the dentist had gone on and said basically, well, you've not been for 2 years, 6 months, or whatever it was. And basically, if you didn't have a mouthful of gob-rot, you won't be in this position in the oh my goodness. I was like,
yeah.
Okay, right. Now that was a mess. I had to go through ICO and all sorts of different bodies to try and resolve this. The fact that the patient had, well, the first thing I said to the dentist was, for goodness sake, don't delete it, because that is even worse. We're going to have to manage this. He, of course, deleted it. What was worse, he denied deleting it. It was, honestly, you couldn't write it, could you? Anyway, because the ICO had decided, because the patient had put the information on there in the first place and hadn't pushed it forward to a complaint, it was okay for us just to manage it as almost a near miss, which I thought the dentists were very lucky situation to be in. But people do get quite emotional about these reviews sometimes, and it is very easy to react instead of respond in the sensible way. Same with complaints. Sometimes I'll write a response to a complaint, and then 2 versions later, I've got it where it needs to be. Once I've calmed down a little bit, once I've,
Yeah.
just, okay, this is what I want to say. And it's good to sometimes get that out your system, but this is what I've actually got to say.
Yeah.
And actually look at it like that. But because like you say, everyone's watching it, looking at what your reaction's going to be. And it's very easy to breach data when you're responding. And we've always got to have that in mind. And like you say, take it offline. Don't start getting into it. I've had situations where a patient's complained, I was late and the dentist wouldn't see me. I'm really unhappy, blah, de blah. The response somebody put on was, well, you, out of the 10 times you've been, 9 times that you were late, we saw you. And this was the first time we didn't. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa, hang on a minute. And even, yes, that's true. But going back with what will be viewed as, well, 1, a GDPR breach, and 2, just excuses. Now, you could have been handled that so much better by being sorry that they feel like that, being sorry that we were unable. We completely empathise with your frustration at not being able to be seen, and you must have had a terrible time. Get all of the things we need to. I always call it doing the dance, doing the empathy dance, and recognising that that patient has been upset enough to get online and do that bad review unfairly, obviously, but still we need to manage that in the professional, empathetic way that is going to make us come out of it looking like the really good people in the situation, because people will recognize that person is, actually probably there's a reason behind it. One of the other things that I find difficult to manage sometimes, and hopefully you can help with this, but for those, many of us are probably aware that there's been a new law that's come in, employment law, where as employers, we have a duty of care and a legal duty to protect our staff, our employees, from third-party abuse, be it physical, emotional, mental. And that actually does come into if we have a complaint or a review that is particularly rude or offensive or could be damaging to one of our employees. So I'm always very mindful that, obviously in the background, maybe there is something for us to deal with as practice managers, but we should not allow anyone to go on and name and abuse anybody that's within our employment, be it self-employed or employed, to be honest, in a way that could come back on us as managers, and from an employment law point of view, it causes some problems.
Yeah, it is important. I mean, there's a couple of things there. And one thing I will say, certainly from working feedback perspective, is we've kind of had this policy in place ever since we started. We have a moderation team because, typically when reviews work, it's one way. It's always been whatever the reviewer is saying, it goes in and it will basically publish as they want it to publish. But, within healthcare, it's very different. As we all know, it's there are so many things that are involved, and as you say, it's personal. We have a moderation team that actually looks at the reviews before they go live. Now, what we don't do is we don't sweep them under the carpet, but we have a policy that acknowledges exactly that. So if there's anything that's defamatory or abusive, it doesn't go live. We put it into what we call the moderation process for further investigation. The practice has the ability to see it before anything else happens with it. And because of compliance purposes and various other things, which will lead into something else you said, was we ensure that you have the opportunity to respond responsibly. You have the opportunity to think about it and consider it rather than somebody's left this review and it's just gone all online. So our moderation policy is very, very valued by all of our dental practices and other clients that we work with, because it gives you that element of confidence that not everything that's said is going to be published. So that's one element. And when it comes to names, we have a level of confidentiality, and of course, as a feedback provider, we are covered by data controllers through the data protection as well. But the other part you were saying about the reviews that come in, what I wanted to point out also was that by being proactive, and again, this is something that I'll keep reiterating, by being proactive, you're going to get your practice will get a full picture of all of the comments that are coming through. So they're not random. They're not, every 6 months or every 3 months you'll get a review and typically there'll be somebody moaning. Because you're being proactive, you're getting all the good stuff. You're getting all the confidence and the positive reviews, as well as potentially some constructive, but you're dealing with it. And that, trust me, the amount of positive reviews far outweigh some of the less than positive ones. So that's why it's important to try and have a level of balance in terms of this. And it's not just about, asking only the happy patients for reviews, which again, we'll cover that, something called review gating, if you want to, in further discussion. But that's why it's so important that by being proactive, you're getting full comments and you're getting an understanding of what the whole of your patients feel about the service, not just the odd few.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I do genuinely think that this is, whilst negative feedback isn't, it's hard work and it's upsetting sometimes, but I do think it is a safety net, definitely. I know I've worked with practices where I've been asked to help with some complaints that have come in, and I think it was the third time a complaint had come in, some feedback had come in rather, about feeling rushed, feeling like the dentist didn't have time, feeling that they'd not been listened to.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that, and then had a serious conversation with the dentist who had been trying, he'd had an associate leave and had been trying to do more UDAs than was probably sensible. 3 people commenting on that's how they feel. I sat down and said, right, bit of tough love now. This is affecting you. Look at this as, your early warning signs for a big mistake happening. And the up end of that is, if these patients do complain officially and it does escalate to the NHS, or it's not generally straight to the GDC, but private complaints authority, obviously, then you've got a whole load of mess and a whole load of inconvenience and a whole load of stress to manage. And we all know GDC, NHS and TQC all live in that lovely little Bermuda Triangle and all talk to each other and share information. So if these,
Okay.
oh yes, oh yes. So if NHS England got complaints of the same vein, feeling rushed, they're going to prick up their ears and they're going to go, what's happening in this practice then?
Yeah.
Oh, look, this practice is generating very high numbers of UDAs. We better see if somebody could go in and see if everything's okay. Then you've got the CQC or HIW knocking on your door. It's there for safety. So they're right. But what I'm saying is, if you are getting feedback and people are saying the same thing, do something. We had a lovely compliance session with Pat Langley yesterday on here, and Pat was like the same thing about compliance. I think she said it was Albert Einstein. I'm not 100% there. And she said, it's insanity, the act of doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. And it's like, that is what we do sometimes with feedback. Oh yeah, they're moaning about that again. Right, well, what do we do about it? And yeah, there are some crazy ones, like, it's not our fault if the weather's bad. It's not our fault, but are we opening the door a little bit earlier if it's rain? We should look at things and actually see it as a safety net. Because if we start getting feedback that turns to a complaint that goes to the regulators, that's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, I mean the other positive thing there, Lisa, that you're saying, about NHS England, CQC, etc., is that yeah, the positive bit about it is that also when they are looking at dental practices, by being proactive as a practice, they're seeing the good stuff as well. So they are seeing the balanced things. They are seeing history, an extended history of getting all the good feedback and the positive comments. So it doesn't become just one-sided in terms of that. And that's the great thing about your online reputation is that if it's consistent and that you are being proactive with it, is that it will stand out, whether it to be potential patients or whether it to be some of the regulators, which is really, really important. That you can't put a value on your reputation when it comes to things like that, because all of a sudden that it's there and it's online and it's something that gives you credibility.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've had a conversation this week with a practice, and it was really good, and they're really proactive with it. There've been a few feedback come through for, running late. It's okay, but dentist runs late. Great feedback, but the word but, and I'm like, okay, there's quite a lot of comments here about being on time, being kept waiting. So, then I'm saying to the practice, okay, let's run a waiting time audit. And she's like, okay. So run a waiting time audit, let the dentist see exactly how much. And, all our software systems can run these reports off for us really easily. You don't even have to be really confrontational, giving them this information, but just giving them that reality check of 60% of the time you're running over 10 minutes late. Because that isn't, and I know some practice managers say, yeah, but they'll do what they want anyway. And I get that, and they do. But on a bigger scale, that's affecting the reputation of the whole practice, and it has to be addressed, or it has to at least be discussed, even if nothing changes. The fact
Yeah, and it's not just it's not just the reputation, Lisa. It's also the staff morale. There's
oh,
nothing worse because
100%.
certainly all the front of house or reception team, those welcoming the patients, they're the
Yeah.
ones that typically get the brunt of comments like that. And it does yeah, if you're not able to share, as you say, by running out the reports, whether it be to do with appointment audits or timekeeping audit side of things, is that again with something that's very popular with what we do is that we generate reports on a monthly basis of the feedback that happened, warts and all, so positive and negative. And what a lot of practices do is they will share this, where they have a weekly, fortnightly, whatever frequency they have their team meetings. And it does exactly that. It addresses, oh, we've had a few comments in relation to, late appointments or whatever it may be. But the other side to that is that, wow, look at all the comments we've had saying how welcoming the front of house team is, how clean the surgery is, just how friendly everybody is. So again, it's that balance of making sure that, do you know what? It's not just about the negative stuff. It's not just about the stuff that we don't quite do as well as we could. It's look at the patients that are saying wonderful things about us, and that's for staff morale, it's just fantastic, and it's really important that that's shared throughout.
It is, and I love the fact that the feature now shows us who they've actually seen, dentist wise. We go a little bit step further, and we give out little cards and ask for a review. So the nurses will say, it's just a really simple little card. It could be a piece of paper, anything.
Yeah.
Lovely to see you today. Your care providers were, and they just squiggle the names on the card. You've got a little QR code, and the patients actually name the nurse as well.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so important to feed it back, the positive and the not so positive. So I think a lot of us worry sometimes about the fact we can't appraise our self-employed people as we would
Yeah.
an employee.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't point out what the feedback is, whether it is positive or negative, because it does help them realize. Hopefully, we work with people that take it on board and aren't just blinkered and I don't care. Hopefully, we don't work with people like that.
Yeah.
And I think it is good that you can pull the reports off, you can send it to them individually. I know we make a point of talking at practice meetings of some really amazing ones that have come through. We love some funny ones as well. Because
Yeah,
it is.
we're trying to collate something actually that will be the funny and the slightly odd reviews, and we're not quite sure how to produce that as yet. But yeah,
Well,
you should see some of the stuff that
okay.
that our moderators look at and think, really,
Yeah.
and it's from sometimes from unexpected sources. But anyway, yes,
I think one of the funny, and this always sticks in my mind. One of the funniest ones that I think I ever come across was new dentist is nice, but I feel like I'm being treated by Chewbacca. He needs to shave his chest. It was funny. It was quite funny. Obviously, we can't, use that. But I just thought that was funny. And I think another one, it was like, oh, receptionists used to be great, and they've replaced them with two Oompa-Loompas. I was like, to be fair, they weren't massively wrong.
yeah,
I can say that it's not my practice. But yeah, it's I love humility. I love having a bit of fun with the responses. Don't be too starchy is my thing.
yeah,
I had one a few weeks ago that was brilliant experience, great practice, great receptionist. And the his email thing was something like Rocket Man 123 or something like that. So our response was, thank you so much for your review. We think you're out of this world as well, Rocket Man.
yeah, nice.
Have a bit of fun with it, because that actually speaks volumes about you as a team. And people do, I'm not saying let's all become comedians, but show that we can have a bit of fun. We aren't don't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
And make sure you're using these things for marketing and get it on socials, get it fed onto your website. It's easy when you've got a dashboard such as working feedback. It's such a no-brainer, and I know you guys have actually starting to develop an AI that you can help with the responses as well, which
With
is
replies, yeah, we're looking to introduce that because, as we know, sometimes getting the response, as you said, Lisa, you'll look at perhaps, you'll think of the response you want, but then it's 3 iterations later is the one that you really want to leave. And AI gives that benefit towards doing some of that. But we're testing with that at the moment, so it's something we'll look to roll out when it's ready and when it does exactly as you as a dental practice will want it to do. So yeah, that's something we're looking at. But I mean, again, to your point about that, about having fun, yes, it's important. But the other part is, and I say this to a lot of practices when it comes to feedback, is, you know, don't try and be something that you're not. A dental practice is clinical enough, for potentially for nervous patients and for others visiting. And if they don't visit them regularly, it can be a bit intimidating. So, don't be transparent in terms of your responses. Be human, because it is really important. And that's why I said earlier about, the keywords. What is important is that if you're very particularly good and you've got some clinicians that are particularly good at dealing with nervous patients, is that's the kind of review I want to see if I'm a nervous patient. The fact that somebody else has been in there and they're not nervous anymore, or it was a wonderful experience. It's that kind of, as you say, it's a bit of humility when it comes to reviews and replies sometimes, but it's also, don't try and create a false picture of what you are. Be human, because that's what this industry is. It's about people. At the end of the day, it's so be human, be transparent, and give your practice a personality. Don't try and be like somebody else down the road, or super efficient or anything else. Just be human and be natural.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So I mean, like I say, I'm not here trying to sell anything. I genuinely like to talk about things that I use and that work for me and my practices. But having it all on a dashboard and being able to then transfer it through to Canva and then put it on my socials, and this is where the automation for me,
Yeah.
it makes it an hour's job instead of maybe a full day's job trying to take it out and put it onto this. And it's just a bit of a no-brainer. And from a we mentioned regulatory before, CQC do like to see that we are effective. They like to see that we're listening to our patients, so it shows we're caring, and all of the outcomes that they like to see. Kind of they always go back to the, you said we did scenarios, you said that you'd like this or that this wasn't great, so we've done this.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
this is an ideal platform to help us do this. And I know for those practices that are NHS and have to do the friends and family, it doesn't need to be a separate issue, because I know I get my little reminders from you guys going, don't forget, it's time to submit your friends and family. And it's like, oh, yes. So I
Yeah,
do
we've
that. So don't ever take that away, because I'll forget.
no, we won't. We find that really useful, actually. So whether, for particularly for those that have an NHS contract of some description, it's the FFT is built in within the feedback questionnaire. So
And
it's
we
an
can word
automatic.
I spoke to you guys, and it was like we've worded we've incorporated some of the more friends and family way of asking questions into the questions that go out to the patients. So
Yeah.
was the practice clean and tidy and da da da? You can just work it into that, can't you? And what I
Yeah.
loved about it was you can tailor the questions
Yeah.
to get what you need from it.
Well, this goes back to being, it's about your practice. You do, there's certain things that you need to know, that there's certain things that you want to understand what you do well or what you could be doing better. And that's why the ability to bespoke the questions that fit in, not just the questions, whether you're asking specific questions about cleanliness and stuff, but also it's the way that you communicate with patients. We don't all talk in the same way to certain patients, to our audience, and that's the other good thing about being able to tailor the questions, is that that's how you communicate with your, that's how you want to communicate with your practice, as opposed to being well, what do they mean? I don't quite understand that. It's not a template. It's something that you can actually bespoke for your patients.
Yeah. So just to explain a little bit how it kind of works in our practice, that works really well. So I do like to share it just because I know it works. Is our patients come in and they get seen, and then later on that they receive a thank you for visiting, and it's all branded into with our logos and things. We'd love to hear some feedback, so they get the opportunity to provide that feedback. And if it's not so positive, we, like you said before, Phil, it comes straight to us. It doesn't just go out there. It comes to us to check, is this our patient? Is this okay to publish? Is it, does it, and you do have the choice not to, but it does go on you also get your
Because of our CQC connections and with the NHS as well, is that as long as you give us a valid reason, and we accept that goes, and it's all, it goes within an audit. So that is important, that it's all recorded in terms of that, because as I say, nobody benefits if you're sweeping feedback under the carpet, or it doesn't portray you, and it means that just things are being missed, and potentially what could be very powerful for you is sometimes being ignored because somebody else doesn't want it to be seen by anybody else. But the other thing as well, if I may, I appreciate time is moving on. The review gating side of things. Can I just touch upon that, Lisa?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because everybody thinks about Google reviews and how important they are. And as I mentioned earlier, Google has changed the way it does things. It's not about those with the most Google reviews will automatically be at the top for the local searches, etc. Their algorithm now is on keywords. It's on the level of relevance to the actual practice and the service itself. But review gating is something I do want to flag, in the sense that some practices, or practices before they come clients with us, will often say, well, yeah, all I want is positive reviews. And they'll only ask for a Google review when the patient has come out beaming and they've only got good things to say. That's kind of, in theory, that's obviously a good, understandable way of doing it. But the problem is that review gating means that, firstly, you're not getting a true picture of the practice, and we're talking about transparency and honesty. And from a more practical perspective, and a scary perspective, is if Google notices that you are review gating, they can actually remove your profile from Google, including your Google business profile. And Imagine what it's going to be like with no Google profile. So just bear that in mind. It's good to get balanced in terms of that, and that's why a balance of review platforms is really key, not just Google reviews.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. We're not saying replace it with everything, be it working feedback or a platform, be it internal patient questionnaires. Lots of people use SurveyMonkey now.
Yeah.
For me, it seems a very difficult way to do it, but get the different methods. Sometimes I know we can actually send it out the little postcards that can get returned back to us. We've got to think of different demographics and different people and how they want to provide feedback, don't we? And lots of practices still have a box in reception. They, sometimes some patients fill it, some practices say it's a waste of time, no one puts anything in anyway, or they put post-op notes in there. Like that.
Or rubbish.
Put the chewing gum in it. Yeah, so it's just about showing that we are looking at it from a wide spectrum, and that is the best way we can get fair, justified, and actually effective feedback, isn't it? And yeah, just feeding this back to patients to show that we do take it on board. Them seeing that we're open to feedback definitely does make a difference on the potential complaints that we receive. Does anybody have any specific questions for Phil about any worries that they have? I know sometimes people come to me and say, I feel like someone's sabotaging us. There's a practice in the same town. We think the reviews are coming from them. Someone's done a bad review. We think, how do we remove it? Has anybody got any questions that Phil can help you with? Everyone's really quiet now. They've at the lunch. They've listened to us going on.
Yeah, exactly. And we've obviously covered everything, Lisa.
Yes, hopefully. If anybody does have anything specific and they prefer not to sort of do it on here, please do come to us. I know Phil and myself more than open to having a conversation. If anybody would like to have a look at working feedback, it did genuinely change the way I work and has had a huge impact on marketing and team, the whole the way that my team feel about it, that they think it's wonderful, but also it does help us manage any niggles that might be there within the team, but also obviously the complaint side of things, it's priceless. So it is definitely joining my list of accountants and HR employment lawyers and compliance, and obviously things we should be getting external support with. Is definitely, this is too big to try to do it on a non-automated basis right now. Even sending emails out is a complete pain in the bottom compared to how it could be when it's automated. So get a demo. Honestly, and Phil, I know you guys look after our Adam members very well.
We do.
Yes, and you really do. You welcome feedback from us.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
How do you improve? You ask me that all the time. What can we do better? What do you need? And that in itself is really,
Yeah,
really
thank you,
important.
Lisa. That's really good. What I will say as well is that if you do happen to jump on the Working Feedback website for anything, what would be one thing is we've done a white paper which is available from the homepage of the website. 850,000 reviews collected over 5-6 years. Great insights into that. So just for some bedtime reading, it's perfect. You can download it, go to the website. It's free. So just have a look at that, because there's some useful data and insights in relation to all parts of feedback.
Honestly, Phil, it is brilliant. When you said to me, "Oh, we're doing this," I was like, "Oh, that would be great." Honestly, got that information all in once. But honestly, whether you use working feedback or you don't, it's such an interesting read, and I know I've taken loads from it. So thank you, Phil, and thank you everyone for joining us. It's nice to see some familiar faces as well. If you need to contact us, you can always do it through Adam or go straight to working feedback. I think we will be back in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure what the topic is, but we're always back. There's always lots to talk about. But thank you so much, and thank you, Sam, for organising it as always.
Thank you.
And thank you for all that, Phil. Really, really valuable information.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. Hope
All
it has
right.
been helpful.
Have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.